the strange bond in the quiet town of Zylara, where the sky glowed a soft purple every night, lived an alien girl named Lyra. She was different from everyone else. With pale green skin and big bright eyes, she always stood out wherever she went. But what made Lyra special was not her appearance. It was her wild pet, a creature no one else had seen before. The pet's name was Koro. Koro was large, covered in soft silver fur that shimmered under the moonlight. His eyes were golden and deep, full of mystery. Though wild in nature, Koro was gentle with Lyra. The two shared a bond that was almost like magic, a connection so strong that it seemed like they could understand each other without words. Lyra and Koro had grown up together. From the moment Lyra found him as a small, frightened creature, lost in the forest, she had taken care of him. She fed him, played with him, and protected him from danger. Over time, Koro grew into a powerful and loyal companion. He followed Lyra everywhere and she trusted him completely. But not everyone in Zylara understood their bond. Some people looked at Koro with fear and suspicion. They saw him as a wild animal, dangerous and strange. The town's owner, a tall man named Drake, was one of those people. Drake had always been wary of Lyra's pet, believing that Koro was a threat to the town's safety. One cold evening, Lyra returned to the small house she shared with Koro. The pet had been restless all day, pacing nervously. Lyra could feel something was wrong. As she stepped inside, she heard strange noises coming from the living room. Her heart beat faster. There was Drake. He held a large canister filled with white foam. Without saying a word, he sprayed the foam all over Koro. The pet yelped in surprise and confusion, struggling to shake the sticky foam from his fur. Lyra's eyes widened in shock. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice trembling. Drake said nothing. He just watched, cold and silent, as the foam covered Koro's fur. Lyra could see the pet's golden eyes darken with fear. She stepped forward quickly and tried to wipe the foam off with her hands, but it was thick and hard to remove. Koro shivered and whimpered. The foam smelled strange, like chemicals mixed with something sharp and bitter. Lyra felt her anger rising. How could Drake hurt her pet like this? What was the foam? "Stop it," Lyra shouted. "You don't understand him. He's not dangerous." Drake shook his head. "He is wild. He doesn't belong here. That foam will calm him down. Trust me, it's for the town's safety." Lyra felt tears in her eyes. Her wild pet, her closest friend, was suffering because of a misunderstanding. She hugged Koro tightly, trying to comfort him. "I won't let you hurt him," she said, fiercely. As the foam slowly hardened on Koro's fur, the pet's movements became slower and weaker. Lyra knew the foam was not just sticky. It was hurting him. Her mind raced. She needed to find out what this foam was and how to help Koro. That night, Lyra sat by Koro's side, watching him breathe quietly but unevenly. The bond they shared felt fragile, threatened by the strange foam. She promised herself she would protect him no matter what. Early next morning, Lyra decided to visit the old library in town. She hoped to find any information about the foam or its effects. The library was dusty and full of ancient books, many written in languages Lyra barely understood. But she was determined. After hours of searching, she found a small book about strange substances used in Zylara for controlling wild animals. The book described a special foam, white and sticky, that could calm even the most dangerous creatures. But it also warned that this foam was toxic to certain alien species. Lyra's heart sank. Koro belonged to one of those species. The foam was not safe for him. It was poisoning her pet. She knew she had to act fast. Koro's condition could get worse if she did nothing. As she left the library, a shadow moved behind the tall shelves. Lyra felt someone was watching her. She turned quickly but saw no one. A chill ran down her spine. This was not just about her pet. There was something bigger going on. When Lyra returned home, she found Koro resting but still covered in foam. She cleaned him gently, whispering soothing words. Koro looked at her with trust, but she saw the pain in his eyes. "We will fix this," Lyra promised softly. The strange bond between Lyra and Coro was tested like never before. But it was strong, and Lyra believed their connection would help them through the danger ahead. Little did she know. The foam was only the beginning. A secret was waiting to be uncovered, one that could change everything she thought she knew about her world and the people in it. The mystery of the foam, the morning sun barely pierced through the thick clouds as Lyra hurried away from the library, clutching the fragile book tightly. Her mind raced with the new knowledge, and the foam that drenched Coro wasn't just some harmless chemical. It was poison, made to control creatures like her pet, to weaken them, maybe even to kill. She glanced over her shoulder, heart pounding. The feeling of being watched didn't leave her. In this town of strange secrets, Lyra knew better than to trust anyone too easily. Who had followed her to the library? Why was someone so interested in what she was reading? As she turned a corner, into a narrow alley, a shadow flickered near the wall. "Show yourself," Lyra called out, trying to sound braver than she felt. No answer came, only silence. With a deep breath, Lyra decided to focus on the bigger problem, saving Coro. She rushed back home, her legs moving faster than she ever thought possible. Inside the small, dimly lit house, Coro lay on the floor. The foam was drying, hardening like a shell over his fur. He looked tired, his golden eyes dull and sad. Lyra dropped to her knees beside him, gently brushing the hardened foam away. But the more she cleaned, the more she noticed something strange. Small patches of Coro's fur beneath the foam were missing, his skin raw and red. "Coro, hang on," she whispered, tears welling up. "I'll find a way." She needed help, but who could she trust? Drake, the owner who had sprayed the foam, was cold and cruel. No way she could ask him. The townspeople feared Coro, calling him a monster. But Lyra remembered one name. And the old scientist named Elian, who lived on the edge of town and was said to know about alien creatures and rare medicines. The next day, Lyra found Elian's small, cluttered workshop. He was an older man with silver hair and kind eyes, busy mixing strange liquids and scribbling notes. "I heard you want to help your pet," Elian said without looking up. Lyra nodded, explaining Coro's condition and the foam's dangerous effects. Elian listened carefully, then pulled out a dusty bottle filled with a glowing blue liquid. "This might help," he said. "It's an antidote, but it's not perfect. It will take time to heal him, and the foam's poison is strong." Lyra's hope grew, but so did her fear. She asked Elian where the foam came from. "There's a lab hidden beneath the town," Elian whispered. "A place where dangerous experiments are done. The foam is made there. No one knows exactly what they want, but it's not good." Lyra's heart pounded. The foam was only part of a bigger plan. What was the lab really hiding? And who was behind it? Suddenly, the workshop door creaked open. A dark figure stood in the doorway. Lyra's breath caught. It was Drake. "Looking for trouble, aren't you?" Drake sneered. Elian stepped forward, steady and calm. "You won't scare us, Drake." But Lyra knew they couldn't fight him here. Drake's cold eyes scanned the room. Then he left, his footsteps fading into the night. That night, Lyra stayed awake, watching over Coro. The pet's breathing was shallow, his body weak, but he still tried to lick her hand with his rough tongue. Their bond was their strength. Lyra's mind was filled with questions and fears. The foam was more than poison. It was a weapon. Why target her pet? What did the villain want from her people? And could she stop it before it was too late? She made a decision. She would find the hidden lab. She would uncover the truth, and she would fight to save her pet and her world. But the shadows around Zilara were growing darker. Enemies were watching. Secrets buried deep were waiting to be revealed. And Lyra was about to step into a dangerous game, one where trust was rare, and every choice could cost her everything. The hidden threat, the town of Zilara, was waking slowly, but Lyra felt no peace. The night's shadows still clung to her thoughts as she prepared for what she knew she had to do next. Find the hidden lab where the dangerous foam was made. Elian had warned her. The lab was deep underground, hidden beneath the town's old abandoned factories. No one who went there returned easily, but Lyra could not wait. Koro's life depended on it. She wrapped a small satchel with supplies and the glowing blue antidote Elian had given her. Koro lay weak beside her, but she promised she'd return, with help or answers soon. As Lyra moved through the quiet streets, her footsteps echoing, she sensed eyes watching her from dark corners. The town that once felt familiar now seemed full of danger. The factories loomed ahead, giant rusted buildings with broken windows and twisted metal. Lyra slipped through a side gate and found a narrow staircase leading underground. Hidden beneath a heavy metal door, her heart pounded as she descended. The air grew cold and thick with dust. Dim lights flickered in the distance. The underground lab was a maze of corridors and strange machines. Walls lined with pipes hissed and pulsed with unknown energy. Lyra's breath caught when she saw tanks, filled with glowing liquid and creatures trapped inside. Creatures like Koro, but twisted and weak, drowning in foam. Suddenly a voice echoed from the shadows. "You shouldn't be here." A tall figure stepped forward, a woman with sharp eyes and a cold smile. "I'm Draven," she said, "head of this facility." Lyra stood firm. "Why are you hurting them? Why poison my pet and others like him?" Draven laughed softly. "Your pet is not special. He's part of a species we need to control. The foam is a weapon, designed to keep your kind weak and under our rule. Your people have lived too long without limits." Lyra's fists clenched. "You're wrong. Koro is not weak. He is strong because of our bond." Draven's smile faded. "We'll see about that." Without warning, alarms blared through the lab. Guards appeared surrounding Lyra. She tried to fight back, but they were too many. In the chaos, she heard a roar. It was Koro, somehow following her underground. Despite the foam's poison, his strength had not left him. Koro burst through the guards, his silver fur shining like steel. He fought fiercely, knocking down enemies with powerful swipes. Lyra felt hope surge inside her. "Come with me," she yelled, grabbing Koro's collar. They ran deeper into the lab, dodging traps and security drones. Lyra noticed strange data, screens. The lab was experimenting on the foam, trying to create a stronger version, one that could control entire populations. Suddenly, they reached a large chamber where huge tanks held creatures in foam-like cages. One tank showed a creature barely alive, an alien from Lyra's planet. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. The foam was more than a weapon. It was a prison. Koro growled, as if promising revenge. As they turned to leave, Draven appeared again, blocking their path. "You can't stop progress," she said coldly. "Soon everyone will be under control." Lyra stood tall, voice steady. "Not while I'm here." With a sudden burst of energy, Lyra and Koro charged at Draven. The fight was fierce and desperate. Lyra dodged blasts of energy while Koro tore through the guards. Finally, Draven stumbled back, defeated but still dangerous. "This is not over," she hissed. "You don't understand the forces you're up against." Lyra didn't answer. She grabbed a control panel and began shutting down the lab's machines. The foam production slowed and stopped. But Lyra knew the battle was only beginning. The hidden threat was real, more powerful than she imagined. With Koro by her side, she made a silent vow. She would protect her world, no matter the cost. The shadows around Zylara were darker than ever, but Lyra's fire burned brighter, and the fight for freedom had only just begun. Gathering allies, the dark tunnels beneath Zylara were silent now, but Lyra's mind was louder than ever. The lab's destruction had stopped the immediate danger, but the threat behind the foam and Draven's plans was far from over. Koro lay weak but resting, slowly healing with Elian's antidote. Lyra knew she couldn't fight alone. She needed allies. But who in a town full of fear and suspicion would stand with an alien girl and her wild pet? She thought about the people she had seen in Zylara. Some curious, some fearful, many cold. But Lyra remembered a few faces, ones who didn't hide their kindness. First was Jax, a young mechanic who always helped her fix broken gadgets without asking questions. Then there was Mila, a quiet librarian with deep knowledge of old stories and secrets. And finally, Ren, a mysterious traveler with skills in combat and survival, who had appeared in town just weeks before. Lyra reached out to each of them, explaining the danger, the lab, and the poison foam. At first they hesitated. The threat was bigger than any of them imagined, and trusting a stranger with wild creatures was risky. But when Lyra showed them Koro's condition and the antidote's effects, their fear began to shift into determination. "If what you say is true," Jax said, wiping grease from his hands, "then this town is hiding a dark secret. We have to stop it." Mila nodded, eyes sharp behind her glasses. "There are old legends about experiments done long ago trying to control alien species. It's all connected." Ren was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've faced threats like this before. You don't have to do it alone." Together, they formed a fragile alliance, but the town was watching. Drake's men were still out there, and Draven's words echoed in Lyra's mind. This was only the beginning. Their plan was simple but dangerous. Find more evidence of the foam's production, expose Draven's group, and protect the creatures trapped underground. Their first step was to sneak back into the remains of the lab, now heavily guarded and repaired quickly by unknown forces. Lyra and her new allies prepared for the mission with careful planning. Jax worked on making gadgets to bypass security. Mila searched for hidden maps and records, and Ren trained Koro to regain strength faster. As they approached the lab at night, tension thickened the air. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound amplified their fears. They slipped inside, hearts racing. The lab had changed. Newer machines hummed, stronger guards patrolled, and the foam tanks were fuller, shining ominously under bright lights. Mila found a secret room filled with files and data drives. She quickly copied what she could, her hands trembling. Among the files they discovered horrifying plans. The foam was just phase 1. Draven's organization intended to spread a stronger version across the galaxy, controlling entire populations, enslaving species, and crushing rebellion before it began. Their worst fears were real. Suddenly alarms blared. "We've been discovered," Jax shouted. The team scattered, dodging guards and flashing lights. Koro led the charge, his silver fur glimmering as he fought fiercely. In the chaos, Lyra saw Drake step from the shadows, blocking their escape. "Going somewhere," he sneered, raising a weapon. Lyra's heart pounded, but she stood tall. "This ends now." A fierce battle erupted. Ren fought skillfully beside her while Jax and Mila worked to deactivate the lab's defenses. Koro charged at Drake, knocking the weapon from his hands. Lyra took the moment to grab the stolen data drives. With one last push, they escaped the lab, running into the cold night air, hearts pounding with fear and hope. Back in the safety of Elian's workshop, Lyra and her allies examined the data. The scale of the threat was beyond anything they had imagined. The foam, the lab, Draven's plans. It was a war waiting to explode. But they had proof. And now, they had a mission: to warn the galaxy, to unite those who still believed in freedom, and to fight back with every ounce of strength. Lyra looked at Koro, his eyes slowly brightening with life. "This is just the beginning," she whispered, and the fire in her heart burned brighter than ever. The foam attacked the calm before the storm was shattered in an instant. Lyra and her allies barely had time to catch their breath after escaping the lab with the stolen data. The night sky over Zalara flickered with strange, pulsing lights. Warning, signals that the enemy was coming. "They know we have the evidence," Jax said, eyes scanning the horizon, "and they're not waiting." Within minutes, the first wave struck. Foam cannons appeared at the edges of the town, firing thick, white streams that spread quickly, covering everything in their path. The sticky foam hissed as it touched the ground, releasing toxic fumes that made the air heavy and hard to breathe. Lyra grabbed Koro's collar, feeling his muscles tense. The foam was the same poison that had almost killed him. "Get ready," she whispered. The townspeople scattered, in panic. Some hid, Others tried to fight back, but the foam was relentless. Lyra's group formed a circle around Koro, shielding him as best they could. "We need to reach the source," Mila said urgently. "The main cannon. If we destroy it, the attack will stop." Ren nodded. "But it's guarded heavily." Koro growled low, his golden eyes blazing with fierce determination. Despite the foam's poison still coursing through his veins, his strength was returning. Lyra saw the bond between them shining brighter than ever, a bond that no weapon could break. They moved carefully through the chaos, dodging foam blasts and collapsing buildings. The air was thick with fear and the sharp scent of chemicals. As they neared the main cannon, guards surrounded the area, robotic soldiers covered in armored suits firing foam in waves. "Stay close," Lyra ordered. Jax threw a smoke bomb, hiding their approach. Koro charged forward, tearing through the robots with powerful swipes. Ren fought beside him, agile and precise. Lyra ran to the cannon's base, pulling out a small device Jax had made, a powerful disruptor that could overload the machine. But just as she connected the device, Draven appeared, blocking her path. "You're stubborn," she said coldly, "but this ends here." Lyra stood firm. "Not while we still fight." A fierce duel began. Lyra dodged blasts of energy, her heart pounding. Draven was skilled, but Lyra's determination and the strength of her bond with Koro gave her power, beyond skill. With a desperate move, Lyra managed to activate the disruptor. Sparks flew and the cannon shook violently. "No!" Draven screamed as the machine exploded, sending foam spraying everywhere. But this time it was uncontrolled, creating a white storm that swirled and raged. Lyra shielded her eyes as the foam storm grew wild, the poison filling the air. Koro howled, fighting against the foam's grip, his body glowing faintly with an inner light. The tide was turning, but not without cost. Jax was caught in the foam, struggling to breathe. Mila collapsed nearby, her vision blurring. Ren protected Lyra with his body, but the poison was spreading fast. "We need the antidote," Lyra shouted, fighting panic. She pulled out the glowing blue liquid Elian had given her and rushed to their side, applying it quickly. Slowly, strength returned to her friends. Koro's light grew stronger, and with one final roar, he shook off, the last of the foam's poison. The storm began to fade. Draven disappeared into the shadows, vowing revenge. Lyra looked around at her friends, tired, battered, but alive. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "But today we won." The bond between Lyra and Koro had saved them all, and their fight for freedom burned brighter than ever. The final stand, the aftermath of the foam attack, left Zylara scarred and shaken, but Lyra knew the battle was far from over. Draven had retreated, into the shadows, but her threat still loomed large. Lyra stood on a high ridge overlooking the town, Koro beside her, their bond stronger than ever. The glowing blue antidote had saved their friends, but the poison's effects reminded her of how fragile their victory was. "We can't wait," Lyra said, voice firm. "Draven will strike again, stronger and smarter." Her allies gathered around, Jax, Mila, Ren, and Elian, all wounded but ready. The stolen data revealed more than just plans. It held the key to destroying Draven's entire operation. "There's a central control tower," Elian explained, pointing to a distant mountain. "If we take it down, we stop the foam at its source." The journey was dangerous. The path twisted through thick forests, jagged rocks, and deep ravines. Draven's guards patrolled heavily, ready to stop any attack. As they moved forward, the team faced ambushes, traps, and strange creatures warped by the foam's poison. Every step tested their strength and will. One night, as they camped beneath alien stars, Lyra sat beside Koro, her mind restless. "What if we fail?" she whispered. Koro nuzzled her hand, eyes steady and calm, a silent promise that they would fight together no matter the outcome. The next day brought the final challenge. The control tower rose like a dark fortress, guarded by machines and soldiers with foam weapons. The air buzzed with tension. Lyra's heart pounded as they planned their attack. "Jax and Mila will disable the security systems," Lyra said. "Ren and I will take down the guards. Koro will protect the perimeter." The battle began like thunder. Jax and Mila slipped inside, hacking systems and breaking codes. Ren and Lyra fought fiercely, dodging blasts and striking back with everything they had. Koro roared, charging into the fray, his silver fur flashing. He fought like a wild storm, unstoppable and fierce. Inside the tower, Lyra and Ren reached the control room. There, Draven awaited, cold and dangerous. "You're brave," she said. "But you cannot stop the future." Lyra raised her voice. "The future belongs to those who fight for freedom, not control." A fierce fight broke out. Energy blasts clashing, bodies moving fast in the tight space. Draven was powerful, but Lyra's determination and the hope of her friends gave her strength. Just when it seemed Draven would win, Koro burst through the door, knocking her aside with a powerful swipe. Lyra took the chance to destroy the control panel. Alarms screamed as the foam production machines began to shut down. Draven glared furious, but it was too late. The foam factories across the galaxy stopped their deadly work. As the tower began to crumble, Lyra and her team raced outside, barely, escaping the collapse. Standing together on the ridge, watching the dawn break over Zalara, Lyra felt a fierce pride. "We did it," she said softly. "We saved our world." Koro nuzzled her, golden eyes shining. But Lyra knew the galaxy was vast and darkness still lingered. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. And with the rising sun, their fight for peace would continue. Stronger, united, unstoppable. Aftermath and hope. The battle was over. The foam factories were destroyed, and Draven's dark plans lay in ruins beneath the rubble. But the scars left on Zalara and its people were deep. Lyra stood on the edge of a cliff, watching the sun rise over the healing town. Koro rested beside her, his silver fur catching the golden light. Though still weak, he was stronger than ever, a symbol of their survival and hope. The townspeople emerged from hiding, their fear replaced by cautious curiosity. Some approached Lyra, offering thanks or quiet nods of respect. Slowly, the walls of suspicion around her and Koro began to crumble. But Lyra knew peace was fragile. The galaxy was vast, filled with shadows and secrets. The enemy they fought was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. One evening, as the stars blinked awake in the dark sky, Lyra received a message, a faint signal picked up on Elian's devices. It was from another planet, a distant world where others like her lived, struggling against threats unknown. "They need help," Mila said softly, eyes wide with wonder. Lyra felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders once more. The fight for freedom was far from finished. "We'll go," she said firmly. "Together." Her allies nodded, ready to face whatever came next. Koro stood tall, his golden eyes glowing with fierce determination. The bond between them was more than friendship. It was a promise to protect, to fight, to never give up. As they prepared their ship, Lyra looked back at Zalara, a home that had taught her courage, hope, and strength. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. The stars awaited, and with them endless possibilities. The galaxy was vast, and the fight for freedom would go on. But Lyra knew one thing for sure. As long as they stood together, no darkness was too deep, no enemy too strong. Their story was only beginning. Shadows beyond the stars. The stars stretched endlessly across the sky as Lyra and her allies prepared their ship for departure. Zalara was behind them now, a place of memories, battles, and hope. But the galaxy ahead was unknown, filled with dangers darker than they had ever imagined. Elian monitored the faint signal they had received. A desperate call from a distant planet called Valaris, where alien refugees were disappearing without a trace. "This isn't just a local threat," Elian warned. "Something bigger is hunting them." As they entered hyperspace, Lyra felt the familiar pulse of fear and excitement. The bond with Koro was stronger than ever, but the questions weighed on her mind. Who was behind these new disappearances? What dark force lurked beyond the stars? Their ship landed on Valaris, a world scarred by war and shadow. The air was thick with ash and silence, Villages were empty, and the few survivors spoke in whispers of the hunters, ruthless beings who struck in the night, stealing lives and hope. Lyra's team split up to gather information. Mila deciphered ancient texts revealing a legend of a cosmic predator, a creature that fed on life energy, invisible and unstoppable. If the hunters are real, Mila said, we're facing an enemy unlike any before. One night, as Lyra patrolled the dark streets with Koro, a sudden chill ran through the air. Shadows moved unnaturally, twisting and flickering. Without warning, an unseen force struck, pulling Lyra into darkness. She fought with every ounce of strength, calling out to Koro. The bond between them flared like a beacon. Koro burst through the shadows, tearing at the invisible chains holding Lyra captive. But the hunters were clever. Their power grew with every victim, and they were already closing in. Back at the ship, Jax and Ren prepared defenses, knowing the enemy would come for them next. Elian worked frantically to analyze the hunters' energy signatures, searching for a weakness. As the first attack began, Lyra realized that this fight was not just for survival. It was a test of their unity, courage, and the very bond that made them strong. We have to stand together, Lyra said, voice steady despite the fear. The battle for Valaris would be harder than anything before. But Lyra and her allies had one advantage, a bond that could light the darkest stars and fight the deepest shadows. The war for the galaxy's soul had only just begun. The hunter's wrath. The night on Valaris was alive with danger. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps as the shadows crept closer, unseen but deadly. The hunters were no ordinary enemies. They struck from nowhere, draining life and hope with every attack. Koro stood guard, muscles tense, eyes glowing gold, in the darkness. His bond with Lyra was their strongest weapon, but even that felt fragile against the hunter's strange power. Inside their hidden base, Elian and Milo worked feverishly, decoding ancient scripts and analyzing energy traces. The hunters feed on fear and life energy, Mila explained. The more terrified their victims, the stronger they become. We need to find their source, Elian said. Cut off their power at its root. But every clue led them deeper, into the unknown, a labyrinth of ruins beneath Valaris, filled with traps and echoes of long-lost civilizations. Lyra led the team through the dark tunnels, each step heavy with tension. The walls whispered secrets and strange symbols glowed faintly, warning of the hunter's origins. Creatures born from cosmic shadows, once imprisoned but now free to roam. Suddenly, the ground trembled. From the darkness, a massive shadow creature emerged, its form shifting like smoke and stars. The hunter's leader, Ren whispered, drawing his weapon. The battle was fierce. Koro lunged, teeth and claws flashing, but the shadow was swift and powerful. Lyra fought beside him, using every skill she had learned. Just as hope seemed to fade, Mila discovered a hidden crystal embedded in the tunnel wall, a source of ancient energy. "That's it," she shouted. "If we destroy the crystal, we weaken the hunters." With renewed determination, Lyra and her team fought their way to the crystal. Draven's warning echoed in Lyra's mind. "You don't understand the forces you're up against." But Lyra understood more than ever. Their strength came from unity, courage, and the unbreakable bond between her and Koro. As she reached the crystal, the shadow leader struck, trying to stop her. With a final, desperate push, Lyra shattered the crystal. Light exploded through the tunnels, the hunter's power breaking like glass. The shadow creature screamed, dissolving into nothingness. Valaris began to breathe again. But Lyra knew the war was far from over. The galaxy held many secrets, and darker shadows still waited. As they emerged into the dawn, Lyra looked at her friends and whispered, "We fight not just to survive, but to protect all life. Together, we are stronger than any darkness." And with that, their journey continued, into the stars, into the unknown, ready for whatever came next.